The morning sunlight spilled through the curtains of a small wooden house, brushing across the floor where Ethan Walker stood with his suitcase packed. It was the day he had waited for, the day he'd leave his small hometown behind for college, for the city, for dreams bigger than this quiet life. In the next room, the rhythmic sound of tiny tools tapping metal echoed. His father, Robert Walker, was in his workshop again, fixing watches as he had done for 30 years. His hands were steady, his back slightly bent, his eyes tired but kind. He was a man who measured life not by money or fame, but by seconds, not by how he spent them. Ethan stepped into the workshop. "Dad," he said, "I'm heading out soon." Robert looked up, smiled faintly, and reached into a small drawer. "Wait," he said, "I have something for you." He handed Ethan a small box. Inside was an old wristwatch, the glass scratched, the strap cracked, the ticking faint. "It's broken," Ethan said with a small laugh. "I know," Robert replied. "Take it to the pawn shop tomorrow. See what they'll offer." Ethan frowned. "Why?" Robert smiled in that quiet, knowing way. "You'll see." The next day, Ethan took the watch to Miller's pawn shop, a dusty little place that smelled like rust and tobacco. The pawnbroker squinted at the watch, tapped it twice, and said, $20. It's old, not worth much. Ethan laughed and went home. "Dad, he offered $20. Robert only nodded. "Now take it to the antique store." At Thompson's Antiques, the shopkeeper studied it carefully and smiled. "A 1942 Hamilton Navy issue," he said. "Rare piece. I'll give you $500. Ethan's eyes widened, and he ran home breathless. But before he could speak, Robert said calmly, "One more place in the museum." Ethan sighed but went. At the City Museum of History, the curator examined the watch under a light, eyes wide. This belonged to the We2 Navy collection. Only a few made. "We'll offer you $10,000. Ethan could hardly breathe. "10,000? He ran home shouting, "Dad, you won't believe it." Robert smiled and said softly, 20 in one place, 500 in another, 10,000 somewhere else. The value didn't change, the place did. Remember that, son. When you feel worthless, maybe you're just in the wrong place. Years passed. Ethan became an architect in New York. The city lights, the noise, the deadlines, everything felt alive. He worked late, achieved more, and yet somehow felt emptier with each success. Calls to his father became short, visits rare. "How are you, son?" Robert would ask. "I'm fine, Dad, just busy, always busy." Then one winter morning his phone rang. The voice on the other end was shaky, his neighbor from home. "Ethan, your father passed away last night." The world went silent. The city, the office, the noise, all of it disappeared. Time itself stopped ticking. When Ethan returned home, the house was quiet, almost too quiet. The old clocks in the workshop were still ticking, but the man who wound them was gone. On the workbench, surrounded by tiny screwdrivers and magnifying lenses, lay that same broken watch. Ethan picked it up. It felt heavier than before. He turned it over, running his thumb along the worn edges. That's when he saw it. Faintly engraved on the back were the words, "Time only has meaning when you give it to someone." His chest tightened. Tears blurred his vision. He sank into his father's chair and let the silence speak. He realized then, his father had never been teaching him about watches. He'd been teaching him about life. Every second mattered. Every person deserved time, attention, care. His father hadn't fixed watches. He had fixed moments. Ethan spent the next few days cleaning the workshop, holding each tool like a piece of memory. He found sketches, half-finished projects, and notes written in Robert's neat handwriting. Every one of them carried the same message. Don't rush. Take your time. For the first time, Ethan understood what that meant. Back in New York, Ethan was a changed man. He still worked as an architect, but he stopped living by the clock. He began volunteering on weekends, mentoring interns, visiting nursing homes, spending his hours with people instead of around them. And every day he carried the old watch in his pocket. People noticed. "Why keep a broken watch?" they asked. Ethan smiled. "It reminds me not to waste time on things that don't matter." They'd laugh, not realizing how true those words were. Years later, Ethan was invited to speak at a charity gala. The topic, the value of time. He stood before hundreds of people, all successful, all tired. He reached into his pocket and held up the old watch. "This watch," he said, "was once worth $20 at a pawn shop, $500 at an antique store, and $10,000 at a museum. Same watch, same time. Different places. The room went silent. Your value never changes, he continued. You may feel overlooked or unappreciated, but that doesn't mean you're worthless. It means you're in the wrong hands. He paused. My father taught me that long ago. He fixed watches for a living, but what he really fixed was people's time. He showed me that meaning isn't in how long you live. It's in what you do with your moments. After the event, a young woman approached him with tears in her eyes. Sir, she said, I was going to quit my job today. I thought I wasn't good enough. But your story, it made me see I just haven't found my place yet. Ethan smiled and placed the watch in her palm for a moment. It doesn't tick anymore, he said, but it still tells the truth. She smiled. It's beautiful. Ethan nodded. It always was. That night, sitting by his apartment window, Ethan wound the old watch again, not expecting it to move. But then a faint sound filled the silence. Tick, tick, tick. He smiled. Time hadn't stopped. It had just been waiting for him to listen. Years later, when Ethan passed away, the watch was found among his belongings. It was still ticking. It ended up in the same museum that once offered $10,000, but this time, there was no price tag, just a small plaque beneath it that read, The Broken Watch, a father's lesson to his son. Value is not in price, but in purpose. Visitors often stopped to stare. Some took pictures. Others simply smiled. A few closed their eyes and whispered, I understand, because that's the truth, isn't it? We are all a little like that watch, scratched, imperfect, sometimes forgotten. But in the right hands, we shine again. Our worth doesn't fade just because others fail to see it. Time doesn't define us. We define time by how we live, how we love, and how we remember. So when life makes you feel invisible, when you start doubting your own value, think of Ethan, of Robert, and of that little broken watch. Because sometimes, what seems broken is simply waiting for the right person, the right moment, the right heart,